Welcome both. Thank you for joining me on the show. Richard, I want to start with you. What do you make of the defendant's behavior during the interrogation video?
Well, I think it's a little bit erratic, and I credit his defense team with making the decision to push showing this interrogation in the entirety. I gather the prosecution wanted to only show the clips it thought were relevant and necessary to give to the jury, and the defense said, no, 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 no. You have to show the whole thing. You have to put it in context. And remember, the defense wants to argue that he was under some kind of medication, he was tired, and at the end of this, he gave a false confession. So it is part of that argument that they show the entirety of this interrogation, not just the clips that the prosecution wanted. And certainly he does look often in this interrogation, especially when the police are out of the room and he's left sitting there by himself, he looks like he's about to fall asleep, and that is in support of his theory.
Well, is the lead investigator the nail in the coffin for him? I mean, is he someone that is key?
Well, I agree with everything that Dante just said, and he is the key storyteller in that way. But remember, he's also defending the investigation itself. Because a typical defense strategy in a case like this is to say, you didn't investigate enough, you concluded it was this defendant and gave up, you didn't follow other leads, you didn't look into other possibilities, there are so many other people who could have committed these crimes. So the lead investigator has to tell you why this suspect and how did they rule out other suspects. And one thing of note here, they waited a long time to do this gunshot residue test. The guy's sitting there in interrogation in the police station for hours, I think, before they do that test. That's a little bit baffling and a little bit troubling for the prosecution.
What do you make of this testimony from Captain Calderon here?
Well, this is a key issue since the confession is front and center in this case. Was the confession made knowingly and voluntarily? Did he waive his rights to counsel, his right not to answer question? So all of this detail is important, and I saw a couple things that interested me. One, they asked the investigator, did you advise him of his right to a lawyer? And the investigator's response, if you listened, was, he was advised. And there was a whole series of questions about, did you advise about this right, this right, this right? And the answer was always, he was advised, which is not the same thing as saying, yes, I advised him. And I would be interested in following up on that on cross-examination. They did give him a sheet with all of those rights written out. He refused to sign it, so he didn't accept and acknowledge it. He is a law enforcement professional himself, so he probably knows these rights anyway, and there can be an assumption that he would have known and understood the rights. But it's very interesting. And, you know, again, it's very interesting that he didn't avail himself of the right to counsel.
We know he had a supervisor role with Border Patrol. Why wouldn't someone like him get a lawyer immediately?
Well, there are lots of possible answers to that question, and the two that come to mind immediately are, one, he's completely innocent and thought he didn't need a lawyer, or two, he is a serial killer, he's delusional, and he assumed he could get away with it. Or maybe something in the middle, but it really doesn't matter. And it doesn't seem to matter how many times I come on television and say this. You need a lawyer if you're being interrogated by police, especially, by the way, if you're being interrogated at 3 o'clock in the morning. That means they think you did something really bad, and you need a lawyer whether you're completely innocent or whether you are a serial killer or at all points in between. It's a terrible decision, and it's to his disadvantage here, but we can only guess why he decided to do it that way.